you see, I live in a world where people say, you can't do it honest. Don't give me that idealistic stuff about you're not going to cheat recruiting. Don't give me that stuff about you're going to educate these kids and put them in a moral setting and a spiritual setting so they can grow. That's a bunch of baloney. That's all past. You got to give them cars. You got to give them a little money under the table. You got to put them in a course where they're not really going to be educated, so you can get them out on the field every day for 4 hours and pound them, and then use them up on Saturday, and then put them back on the street without an education 4 years later. You got to do that to win. What I have to ask those folks is, wait a minute now, what is winning? What is winning?
Mayor Farmer says each of the current 9 districts has approximately 15,000 residents, but the 1980 census shows Montgomery's population at 176.8 thousand, a 34% increase over 1970. The mayor says the annexation brought in about 20,000 new residents. In presenting his plan, the mayor says each of the new districts must have approximately the same number of people, within a 2% variation. He says the boundary lines had to be drawn so that none of the present council members is gerrymandered out of his or her district. With those criteria in mind, Mayor Farmer says each of the districts would have a population of approximately 19,600. In that plan, districts 5 and 1 would be the largest, with over 20,000 each. The council now has up to 6 months to consider the measure, but the mayor asked that it be brought up in 30 days. Councilman Joe Reed objected to the 30-day period of time, saying the council should wait until 5 months from now. Reed says the legislature recognized that it would take more time to consider the measure. That's why it gave the council 6 months. After more discussion, the council finally agreed to consider the measure on July 28th, and in the meantime, send it to the Intergovernmental Relations Committee for further review. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
125 years ago, the East Alabama Male College was founded. Now, a century and a quarter later, the Alabama Male College is Auburn University. Today, President Hanley Funderburk cut an anniversary cake baked by 2 members of the Auburn Food Services staff.
Whether or not it saved money or cost money in Georgia, I don't think anybody knows, and I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is what is best for the power consumers in this state, and how can we best hold down the cost in the future. I don't think anyone would stand here and tell you it's going to save any money either way we go. But the best thing we can do is do the very best we can to hold down future cost increases. And with that in mind, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to move to lay the substitute on the table and urge you to vote aye.
Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman yield?
Okay. Various sources here at the Capitol say the governor plans to appoint Rayner when Finance Director Sid McDonald leaves office in mid-June. Rayner has been close to the governor since James was elected. He was the state's highway director from January 1979 until last June, when he returned to Auburn University and was made executive vice president there. The governor had pushed for selection of Rayner as Auburn University's president, but that effort failed. Rayner has served as a sort of super administrator for the governor since December and has the governor's ear on plans involving mental health, prisons, welfare, and other state matters. Most recently, he came under fire when Senator Earl Goodwin said a member of the governor's office threatened him if he didn't vote in favor of the governor's proposal to restructure the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. It was later revealed that it was Rayner who had threatened not to buy any more bush hogs from Goodwin if Goodwin opposed the bill. Rayner says any remark he made about bush hogs was just in jest. In response to questions about becoming the next finance director, Rayner said, "All I know is the governor is searching diligently for a replacement." He said he has not been offered the job and that any announcement would have to come from the governor's office. The governor's press secretary, Chris Bentz, responded by saying that the governor does not respond to rumors. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
the consent decree is signed, Alabama Power Company will have to pay $2.2 million to nearly 1,200 current and former black employees. In addition, the power company must hire 167 blacks and women who applied for jobs during the 1970s and meet specific requirements in the recruitment, hiring, training, and promotion of blacks and women. Also in the proposed settlement, IBEW and its local unions must comply with Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, forbidding race and sex discrimination in employment. Those who met with EEOC attorneys were mainly concerned about how much money they could receive, when they might get it, and what procedures to follow in getting the money. Some could receive up to $11,000. Attorneys say most employees entitled to the monetary restitution were in janitorial and bargaining unit positions when employed in February 1974. Birmingham Federal Judge E.D. Haltom Jr. will meet with the employees affected by the discriminatory practices on June 15th and then decide if the decree is fair and equitable. If the judge signs the order, attorneys say the proposed settlement would become effective in October. In addition to the monetary and affirmative relief, Alabama Power's employment records will be monitored for the next 5 years. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
Troy fire officials worked till the early morning hours trying to completely extinguish the blaze, which started about 9 o'clock last night. Eyewitnesses say the heat from the fire was so intense that it melted and broke windows in the building across the street. Built in 1914, the old warehouse contained Franklin's Delicatessen, the Standard Chemical Company lounge, and a storage area. Estimated damage for the entire warehouse is between $200,000 and $250,000. Officials are still unsure where the fire started. State Fire Marshal Roy Thornell says just last month the owners of the deli and the lounge were cited as having possible fire hazards. Fire Marshal Thornell says his office hasn't received any notification as to whether the two businesses intended to make the improvements. As is customary in a fire of this size, Thornell says an investigator from his office will go out to the scene tomorrow. He says at this point there's no reason to suspect that the businesses didn't comply with the order, but says the investigator will look to see if there was any attempt to make those improvements. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News in Troy.
The proposed consent decree charges Alabama Power Company discriminated against blacks and females in its employment practices during the 1970s. The utility company denied the allegations, but has agreed to the proposed settlement of $2.2 million payable to almost 1,200 current and former black employees, and says it will hire 167 blacks and women who were denied jobs.
This complaint's been going on for over 5 years, 1974. And we just felt it was the best interest of the company, the employees, the IBEW, and the customers of this company to settle it.
EEOC attorneys meeting with the employees affected by the discriminatory practices say up to $1,100 could be awarded to some workers, most of whom were in janitorial and bargaining unit positions. Attorneys feel the proposed decree is fair and equitable, but say the final decision is left up to a Birmingham federal judge.
That we've put a lot of time into investigating, and we feel very comfortable with the facts, that we've developed, and we feel very comfortable with the relief we've developed.
If the judge signs the order, attorneys say the proposed settlement would become effective this October. In addition to the monetary and affirmative restitution, Alabama Power's employment practices will be monitored for the next 5 years. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
Hello, Montgomery. My name is Herb Wenches, sportscaster at Channel 13 in Birmingham. As I'm sure you've heard by now, I'll be coaching the Orange team in Saturday's A-Day game against your own Phil Snow. I know Phil Snow well, and I know his game plan and tactics for Saturday's contest. He'll do anything to win, and that includes cheating, and that is what really disturbs and upsets the Orange team. He made sure he got most of the good talent for Saturday's battle, but all the talent in the world won't help him make the right decision, the right calls, when it's nitty-gritty time late in the game on Saturday night. I guarantee you he'll find some way to blow it. I've been up for the last 3 nights working on my game plan with my assistants, and we're ready for Mr. Snow and the blue team. There's no doubt we'll outcoach him. Phil Snow, we want some of you and the blue team on Saturday night at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Most of all, folks, we want you to come out and join us Saturday night, the blue and orange game, Jordan-Hare Stadium, 7 o'clock kickoff. See you there. Thank you.
The bill was known as the Municipal Options Bill, and it would have allowed cities in wet counties to go dry, dry counties to go wet counties to go dry while a city within that county goes wet, and so on. It would have separated cities and counties and allowed them to decide for themselves whether or not to sell liquor. While those who were in favor of the bill contended it put a local decision in local hands, those who opposed it said it would only spread the evils of alcohol. The other arguments involved Sunday sales and what size cities could exercise the options had the bill passed, but it didn't by a narrow margin. The House also rejected the Senate changes to the Special Education Trust Fund and the General Fund budget, setting up a conference committee to work out the differences. Speaker Joe McCorkadale took the floor briefly to compliment the House members on their support of the more conservative House budget and set what he hopes to be the mood of the House Conference Committee members.
I hate to leave here as much as you without a budget, but I would hate even worse to leave here with a budget that's in proration again, like these three that we've just recently been living with. And for
Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House.
My position will be that we'll leave without one.
The two commissioners said they were pleased with the results of their trip to Cherokee County to hear the People's Telephone Company rate case. PSC President Billy Joe Camp says the commission will do more traveling so the ratepayers themselves could be involved in the hearings. This was one of his campaign promises, and he plans to continue the trips within reason. In other phone company matters, the commission approved a South Central Bell study of extended area service encompassing Mobile and Mount Vernon. EAS allows toll-free service between neighboring cities and counties, which would normally be in the long-distance range. However, the commission rejected an EAS study request for Birmingham-Centerville. Commissioners Folsom and Camp agreed the cities are too far apart, and the rate increase that goes along with the service wouldn't benefit both cities' customers. And the commission put off a decision on the Western Union rate case. The commission staff recommended approval of the requested rates, but Commissioner Camp says there's a significant increase in telegraph rates, and he wants to give it more thought. Western Union wants to increase their telegraph cost by an average of about $1.25. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Each day as I go to the state capitol to handle the responsibilities which the people of this state have so graciously given safe and free for generations to come, I reflect not only on the sacrifice which these
Invitation to make these open remarks,
as you would like for them to have. You find today many people considering it vogue to use government employees or state employees as political whipping boys, to disparage you in terms of resolutions. Secretary, see the first resolution.
Mr. President, I move the adoption of the calendar.
Resolution.
Mr. President, the House originated adopted the following resolution. Whereas in this consideration, House Joint Resolution 344, Mr. Dixon and Holmes declaring November 11, 1911, concurring with this body review the recommendation and report of the interim committee on reapportionment upon the conclusion and any other investments and or expenditures for the windfall state unreleased revenues. Mr. President, this is the windfall study.
Well, Coach Winches, this is Coach Snow. I just want to tell you that I've made a careful evaluation of the talent, and it looks like you have the edge there. So that means that I'll have to outcoach you, and that shouldn't be much of a problem. Also, Coach Winches, I want to tell you that we've put in several plays. We put in the flea flicker, the lonesome inn, several reverses, the Statue of Liberty, and some things on the kickoff and the punt returns. So don't try any tricks. We'll be ready for anything. In fact, Coach Winches, I think the best thing you can do is to get lost on the way down to Auburn and not show up on Saturday night. But in case you should show up, just look across the field. I'll be the guy in the big white hat, the good guy, the one they'll be carrying off the field on the shoulders when the game is over. See you Saturday.
very small amount. We haven't got.
Captain J.V. Kent says the 3 men are charged with robbing and brutally beating Effie Kelly with a tire iron at her Randolph Street home last May 15th. He identified the 3 men as 24-year-old Horace Mitchell, 26-year-old Andrew Butler, and 30-year-old Henry Oscar Briers.
Warrants have been signed, and all 3 subjects are in jail under $100,000 bond each on each of the charges. In addition to these charges, Andrew Butler is presently in the Montgomery County Jail awaiting trial on 2 separate charges of theft in the 2nd degree without bond and in unrelated cases.
Captain Kelly says the information leading to the arrest came from a concerned citizen. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Andrew James Butler.
Representative Joe Carruthers of Dothan is sponsoring the bill and is trying to convince the House members that the cogeneration bill will eventually help keep electric rates from climbing as fast as they have over the last several years. But a number of other representatives acting on behalf of Alabama Power Company are trying to kill the bill with a stack of amendments. So far, Carruthers has been able to stay about 10 votes ahead of his opponents, but is now trying to keep his allies intact until all of the amendments have been offered. Earlier in the day, the House just barely killed a Senate bill allowing municipalities, cities, and counties the option of deciding through local referendums whether or not to allow alcohol sales. The House also voted not to accept a Senate version of the education and general fund budgets. The House voted to take the budgets to a conference committee, but not before House Speaker Joe McCorkadale insisted the Senate accept a more conservative position or face ending the session with no budget at all. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives.
Personally and frankly,
the Twister touched down shortly after 2 o'clock on the morning of April 1st. It ripped through the downtown business district, then skipped over to a residential area, causing heavy damage to a number of homes. Downed power lines forced rescue workers to search for victims in darkness until emergency generators were activated. By daybreak, 2 people were confirmed dead, 32 others injured. As news of the tornado reached other communities, volunteers brought food and emergency water supplies to the disaster-stricken area. Several towns across the state set up donation stations, collecting food and clothing for the tornado victims. Nearly 800 residents were left homeless as a result of the tornado, prompting state officials to call upon the federal government for aid. 10 days later, President Reagan declared Russell County as a major disaster area, making tornado-stricken Hurtsboro eligible for federal funds. The Twister caused more than $8 million in damage to the small town, and crews continue to clean up the rubble as the community starts to rebuild from the storm. From Hurtsboro, Emery Stapleton, WSFA TV News.
The intent of the retail divorcement bill is to stop large oil refining companies from operating their own service stations. Those who support the bill contend the oil companies can undercut gas prices by avoiding the middleman costs that other service stations have to pay, and in so doing, put those other stations out of business. But those against the bill say it only restricts free enterprise. The House Judiciary Committee voted favorably for the bill, but only after grandfathering in all existing oil company-owned service stations. In the House, a bill allowing Alabama-based credit card companies to impose a $15 issuance fee to new and existing accounts was passed. Most of the afternoon, however, was killed debating a political action committee contribution bill. Opponents of the bill are trying to water the bill down with a series of amendments which so far have been rejected. Montgomery County's bingo bill is still hanging in a state of limbo. The sit-in and House members have met throughout the day but haven't been able to compromise on a version controlling who can be licensed to operate bingo games. Until the bingo bills are settled, all other Montgomery County local bills have been put on hold and could die. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives.
Senators apparently were settling in for a long day when they decided to stop the clock long before the mandatory adjournment time of midnight. Senator Robertson said he wanted all the bills read at length because he was angry that the House had killed a couple of his bills. The delay tactics will prevent several House bills from coming up in the Senate, so Robertson says other legislators will receive the same treatment for their bills that he received on his. The Senate did manage to pass a House bill that would prohibit any state employee from losing salary or benefits as a result of any reclassification plan. The governor has commissioned a study to see whether employees should be reclassified, so it's not known whether he'll sign the bill. The cogeneration bill would allow several cities to join together to buy into Alabama power generating facilities if the power company agreed. But Senator Dewey White asked that that bill be read at length because he says it contains changes that no one in the Senate has seen. So once again, the Senate bogged down as the reading clerk took the floor. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Adequate income. We knew that before we went to Congress. We knew that afterwards. And ladies and gentlemen, it did not change that much. We have the 8 income programs, the life benefits for older people, and such things. Appreciate it. Service providers here who are providing the supportive service to these people.
All right.
Oh, this Matt, and you're sewing in there so you can get it back.
The participants in the Alabama Rural Senior Employment Program are all age 55 or over. Although some collect Social Security and other benefits, the federally funded program finds jobs for the senior citizens.
I saw an ad in the paper asking for somebody above the 55-year bracket who might be interested in an office type of employment. It didn't define what it might be, but at that time I was looking because I had just gotten over a heart attack.
I applied at the Alabama Rural Senior Employment Program, and they just hired me right then.
Commission on Aging Deputy Director Frank Elliott says the program allows older people to continue to make a contribution to the community, and he says the jobs provide the senior citizens with dignity as well as income.
And of course I had no idea at the time that when I applied for something like this that I would find myself in a field that was so far-reaching.
The 16 Montgomery employees work at various jobs including public relations, teaching, and office work. All are paid minimum wage. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
That's a possibility, of course, we always look at, and we look at this very strong. I can't point to a particular case that they might be involved in any other murder or robbery or whatever, but yes, we are looking at them for other crimes, yes.
Kelly was murdered on May 15, 1980, a year ago. Since then, Montgomery detectives have refused to give up on finding her killers. The killers had robbed and beaten the 74-year-old woman to death with a tire iron at her Randolph Street home. She was murdered for less than $100. Captain J.B. Kelly says the new information that led to the arrest of 3 Montgomery men came from a concerned citizen within the past few weeks, while investigators J.B. Andrews and B.W. Knight were continuing to work on the year-old case. Acting on that information, police arrested 24-year-old Horace Mitchell, 26-year-old Andrew Butler, and 30-year-old Henry Oscar Briers. All 3 men have been formally charged with robbery and murder and are being held in lieu of $100,000 in bond. In addition, there's a chance that the break in the Kelly case could result in at least one other pending case being solved. Lieutenant R.D. Mobley.
That's a possibility, of course, we always look at, and we look at this very strong. I can't point to a particular case that they might be involved in any other murder or robbery or whatever, but yes, we are looking at them for other crimes, yes.
Mitchell and Briers are being held at the Montgomery City Jail, while Butler is in the county jail, where he was being held for trial on theft charges in an unrelated case. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
States of America, if it doesn't work right, if all those engines doesn't... Well, the space shuttle worked perfectly, and we're here to say thank you. It was a beautiful thing. We have built us a vehicle that is a real pleasure to fly in.
The legislature has sent several measures to conference committees for compromises, including the cogeneration bill that would allow cities to buy into Alabama Power Company generating plants. The cogeneration bill has been before the legislature for years, and one of the controversial parts deals with whether the cities would be under Public Service Commission control. Also in conference committees are several Montgomery County bills, one making bingo legal for charitable organizations, one providing an additional circuit judge, and one providing pay raises for the Montgomery County probate judge, tax assessor, and the tax collector. Both houses have also passed a bill to exempt some drugs from sales taxes. Senators have stopped the clock in the Senate so they could consider bills beyond the 12 o'clock deadline. House members are also working late tonight. Chris Grimshaw reports on the latest deadlock in the House of Representatives.
The talkathon in the House started with debate over a Senate bill that would allow political action committees to make campaign contributions to elected incumbent officials. Although the floor fight was serious in the early hours, it lightened up with the appearance of a list of Alabama Education Association political contributions. For 30 minutes, contributions were compared.
Some of them are ridiculous, and as relates to some of us who have carried that water for them here in the House of Representatives.
The information in the list has always been available through public financial disclosure forms, so its appearance was apparently meant to emphasize the attempts to put limitations on the amounts of contributions from political action committees to incumbents. The opponents of the bill say they're not entirely against the bill, but are only trying to clean it up. The House clock was stopped early, clearing the way for what could be a lengthy fight on the bill. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives.
Approximately 4:50 p.m., a burglary in process call was received at 2.
65 burglars. Now, what we're doing now is going back and looking at the MO and with the computer and pulling.
We can say we have a positive identification. That's why we've only charged him in these 3 at this time. We're still investigating.
Two years ago, Lieutenant Lotka won the NCAA Pocket Billiards title while earning a master's degree at the University of North Dakota. Last February, the ROTC program manager claimed the Air Training Command Billiards Championship. As a sideline, he performs trick shots.
How many hours of practice does it take to make trick shots like these?
Oh, I think you got to practice a couple hours a day at least to keep at it, keep it up, keep up your talent there.
At first, is that what you wanted to do with trick shots, or was it pocket billiards your first love?
No, I like the competition. That's my favorite part of pocket billiards, playing in tournaments against the big boys.
The big boys will be in New York later this year for the Professional Pool Players World Open. For the record, Lieutenant Lotka plans to be there too.
Going to make the 15 in the corner and the 3 ball on the side. Cue ball is going to go 3 rails up the ramp and down the track and knock the 9 ball in.
Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
Among the bills that came out of the late night session was one on corporate campaign contributions. The House filibustered the bill for several hours before agreeing to the Senate version, which allows political action committees formed by corporations to contribute up to $500 to a candidate's campaign. Another bill that went to the governor amended the ethics law to allow legislators to accept campaign contributions during a legislative session. Among other bills that received final passage was one to allow credit card companies to charge cardholders $15 a year, and another bill that exempts prescription drugs from state and local sales taxes. Also a bill to require approval of a legislative oversight committee before state employees could be reclassified. And both houses approved a bill to increase court costs by $5, with the money going to pay court-appointed lawyers for indigents. Major bills that still haven't been approved include the education and general fund budgets and a bill to give mental health $65 million from the oil lease windfall money. Both houses have already approved $45 million in oil lease money for prisons. Legislators now have a week off and will return to the Capitol May 18th for the last day of the session. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Classic is just, I think, coming along very nicely. We've got, of course, we don't know who the players are. It's too early in the season. But within the next few months, we'll know. And certainly the city of Montgomery and the state of Alabama is gearing itself for what we think to be a very outstanding promotion for the state and the city. And frankly, I didn't realize that so many people in Montgomery were interested in bass fishing. But Lake Montgomery is becoming known now by everybody around the South. And gosh, it's just going to be an exciting week.
And Bo Dowden was here not too long ago checking out the situation down there. Have any of the other fishermen been in town?
I have heard a few rumors that a few of them have sneaked in here and done a little sampling, and they do it sort of privately, you know, and I don't know who all who's been here so far, but I would expect within the next 6 weeks or so there'll be a lot of traffic in here, these fellows coming in, and particularly those who think they have a chance for the Classic. I would expect Roland Martin and Tom Mann and John Powell and several of them to be getting in here, and some of the fellows from the Texas crowd will be moving in, and we're seeing signs and hearing little rumbles, so they're checking it out, and all of them are excited.
The House and Senate stopped their clocks last night and worked until about 2 this morning, passing a stack of bills. Last night's legislative activity wasn't without excitement. The House members held on through a lengthy debate on a campaign contribution bill. But tempers flared when Montgomery's Representative Alvin Holmes cut off the debate on a cloture vote, rarely used by representatives to abruptly end debate. The Senate survived Senator Big Ed Robertson's retaliation for House members killing some of his bills. Robertson slowed the Senate down by asking that all bills be read at length. Despite the delaying tactics, the two houses managed to pass on to Governor James a number of bills. They would allow political action committees to accept corporate campaign contributions, allow incumbent officials to accept campaign contributions before the end of their term, allow Alabama-based credit card companies to issue a $15 privilege fee, spend $45 million of oil money for reforms to the prison system, exempt prescription drugs from state and local sales taxes, increase the expense allowances for the members of the Public Service Commission, and provide state merit system employees some assurance their salaries and benefits wouldn't be jeopardized by a proposed reclassification plan. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
The van has an area on the roadside which will be used in preparation of meals, sandwiches, warm meals, soups, and that sort of thing for the people who will be utilizing facilities here.
Earlier this week, the Senate Education Committee killed the bill which would remove the current requirement of Senate confirmation of ex-executive director and to give the commission the power to review courses offered at 2- and 4-year colleges, excluding technical schools. Dr. Porter says, unfortunately, the bill was at a disadvantage from the very beginning because some legislators linked it with Governor Fob James' original egg bill. He says there was also some hope that a substitute bill removing Senate confirmation for the executive director could be passed, but that too was unsuccessful. Now that there's no chance that the bill can be brought up in this legislative session, he says there's been some talk that it could come up in a special session. Also in his report to the commission, Dr. Porter says he's gotten word from the U.S. Department of Education on the statewide desegregation plan the governor is required to prepare. That plan is supposed to remove any remaining vestiges of racial segregation in the state's colleges and universities. Dr. Porter says state officials are required to submit the plan by June 30th, or 30 days after Judge Truman Hobbs issues an opinion on the ASU merger suit, whichever comes first. In addition, he says the Education Department plans to ask a federal court for more time to work with several southern states on the desegregation plans. If granted, Alabama officials would have until December 31st to work out a plan. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Police say witnesses in the area around Rexford Road got the tag number and description of a car occupied by 2 black males, which was seen leaving the area. Police later apprehended one of the 2 men believed to have been in the car and charged him with theft of property of a different residence on Monticello Drive. Police identified the suspect as Bernard Smith of Sanford Street. Captain J.V. Kent says further investigation uncovered about $25,000 worth of items in Smith's house and led to charges in connection with burglaries of 2 other residences.
Of all the property we have recovered, $12,940 worth of it has already been identified as stolen, and we have contacted the owners. We still have a great deal of property to sift through today.
Captain Kent says 94 items and also a quantity of jewelry has been recovered, and he says the property appears to be from apartments and townhouses.
Now, the other items that we took into custody, we have tentative identification on. But we must match serial numbers, etc., up to police reports before we can say we have a positive identification.
Police say they've charged Smith with burglary, theft of property, and receiving stolen property, as well as possession of cocaine. Police say they're still looking for a second suspect. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
The clock said 8 o'clock, but it was really 15 minutes past midnight in the Senate. Senator Big Ed Robertson was staging a sort of one-man filibuster, slowing progress on bills before the body. So senators stopped the clock in order to create more time before the legislative day was to end at midnight. Under those pressures, Lieutenant Governor George McMillan arranged what he called a gentleman's agreement that if strong opposition arose on any bill, the bill would be carried over until the last legislative day. Senator Dewey White objected to that when his bill lowering the juvenile age came up. McMillan asked for a voice vote rather than a roll call on whether to carry the bill over. It was difficult to tell whether the ayes were louder than the nays, but McMillan ruled that the ayes had it and the bill should be carried over, which prompted White to accuse McMillan of ramming the vote through the Senate. But there was also a little late-night levity when Senator Mac Parsons introduced a resolution containing so many long words the clerk couldn't read it. The resolution was sent to the Rules Committee, where it would likely die. So Parsons started passing out yellow ribbons in honor of his resolution, which he said was being held hostage by the Committee on Rules. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
That makes me very happy. So we've both got something to be happy about. Oh, no, great. Sincere congratulations. I think we're going to get a picture of it.
We recognized Harry this morning because we had a lot of board volunteers there, and we'll be looking for a chairman for next year.
Good to see you, sir. Fine, thank you. Covered fast, fairly important item, I'll be glad to answer. Then some delay on the part of the court in working before Judge Truman Hobbs. We await now his decision on after the opinion is back in the newspaper, which is an AP wire release from Washington, which says that the Department of Education, college in Evergreen, and one to be offered at Southwest State Technical College.
The institution is a question of access.